An officer's badge grants authority, not a license for violence. But on this sunny afternoon, Officer Jansen forgot that distinction. He chose the wrong woman, on the wrong day, with the wrong sun just around the corner. The enclave of Oak Creek Estates was a portrait of manicured tranquility. Mature maple trees formed a lush canopy over wide, immaculate streets where the only sounds were usually the distant hum of a lawnmower or the cheerful chirps of birds. It was the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Until it did. Eleanor Statham, at 78, was a cornerstone of this serenity. A transplant from London, she carried her British elegance like a well-worn, comfortable coat. Her silver hair was cut in a short, stylish bob, and her posture was impeccably straight. Every afternoon, she took a constitutional walk to the small park, armed with a thermos of Earl Grey tea and the Times crossword puzzle. On this particular Wednesday, the sun warmed the pavement as Eleanor approached the crosswalk at Maple and Elm. She moved with the deliberate, unhurried pace of her age, her eyes scanning the quiet street. That's when a pristine police cruiser, moving just a bit too fast, glided to a sharp stop a few feet from her. Behind the wheel sat Officer Rick Jansen. Jansen had been patrolling Oak Creek for 3 years, but he policed it like an occupying force. With a thick neck that strained the collar of his uniform and a perpetual scowl etched beneath a severe buzz cut, he radiated an air of sour entitlement. He believed respect was a one-way street, flowing directly to him, and he had no patience for anything that slowed him down. Seeing an old woman taking her time at a crosswalk was, to him, a personal affront. "Let's move it, lady. I haven't got all day," he barked through the open window, his voice a gravelly intrusion on the afternoon peace. Eleanor paused mid-step, turning her head with a calm that seemed to irritate him further. "Patience is a virtue, young man," she replied, her crisp British accent cutting through the air. "I'm nearly across." Her composure, her lack of fear, was like gasoline on the fire of his ego. He wasn't just being challenged, he was being dismissed. With a grunt of fury, Jansen shoved his car in a park, the transmission groaning in protest. He slammed the door, the sound echoing unnaturally in the quiet neighborhood, and stomped toward her. He was a bull of a man, towering over her slight frame. "You think you're clever?" he sneered, his face reddening. "You think you can just disrespect an officer?" Eleanor stood her ground, unintimidated. "I've been walking these streets since before you were a notion, son. Respect is earned, not demanded." Something inside Jansen snapped. All his frustrations, the slow promotions, the lack of perceived deference, the simmering anger at the world, coalesced into a single, reckless impulse. "I'll teach you about respect," he growled. Before anyone could react, his hand shot out. It wasn't a slap, but a full-bodied shove, his fist connecting with her shoulder with a sickening thud. The force sent Eleanor stumbling backward, her balance lost. She fell hard onto the manicured lawn at the edge of the sidewalk. Her thermos clattered to the ground, its silver shell dented, spilling a dark puddle of tea onto the pristine grass. A collective gasp rippled from the porches of the houses nearby. The bubble of Oak Creek Estates had just been violently burst. Jansen stood over her, breathing heavily, a triumphant sneer on his face. He felt a surge of power, the thrill of having asserted his dominance. He didn't notice the deep, menacing purr of an engine slowing at the end of the street. He didn't see the sleek, dark gray Audi RS7 pull over with an unnatural quietness. The car door opened, and a man emerged. He was 55, dressed in a simple black polo shirt and dark jeans. But he moved with the coiled, predatory grace of a panther. His head was shaved, his jawline was granite, and his eyes, a piercing shade of blue, were fixed on the scene with an intensity that could freeze fire. Jason Statham had been on his way to his mother's for their weekly tea. Now his blood had turned to ice. He saw his mother on the ground. He saw the spilled tea, and he saw the uniformed officer looming over her like a vulture. Statham's approach was silent, his footsteps on the asphalt making no sound. Jansen only turned when Jason was 10 feet away, alerted by the sudden, focused silence from the neighbors on their porches. He saw Statham, and his sneer faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of recognition, before his arrogance reasserted itself. "This is police business. Move along," Jansen commanded, puffing out his chest. Jason stopped, his gaze never leaving Jansen's. His voice, when he spoke, was unervingly calm, a low rumble that carried more menace than any shout. "Did you touch her?" Jansen scoffed, tried to regain control. She was obstructing and showing disrespect. She needed a lesson. "A lesson," Jason repeated, the words flat, devoid of emotion. He took another step forward. He was shorter than Jansen, but his presence seemed to consume all the air around them. "Yeah, a lesson. I'm the law here," Jansen blustered, reaching for the baton on his belt. "Now, I'm telling you to back off before you get yourself in trouble." That was the last coherent sentence he would form for some time. Before the baton even cleared its holster, Jason closed the distance. It wasn't a fight. It was a disassembly. His left hand shot out, not in a punch, but as an open palm strike to Jansen's wrist, snapping it back with an audible crack. The baton clattered uselessly to the pavement. Jansen's eyes widened in shock and pain, a yelp caught in his throat. But Jason gave him no time to process it. A brutal elbow strike, delivered with surgical precision, slammed into the side of Jansen's jaw. The cop's head snapped sideways, his legs turning to rubber. As he staggered, Jason's right knee came up in a devastating blow to his midsection. The air exploded from Jansen's lungs in a wheezing gasp. He doubled over, and Jason finished it with a single, chopping strike to the back of his neck. Officer Rick Jansen collapsed onto the grass, unconscious, a full 10 seconds after threatening the wrong man. The neighborhood was frozen in stunned silence. Then, a symphony of clicks began as every smartphone that had been hesitantly recording was now held aloft, capturing the aftermath. Jason ignored them all. He knelt beside his mother, his expression softening instantly. "Mom, are you all right?" he asked, his voice now filled with gentle concern. Eleanor looked up, a faint, proud smile touching her lips. "Stephen, you didn't have to." "Yes," he said, helping her to her feet with a steady hand. "I did." The internet moves faster than justice. Before the first official police cruiser arrived, the videos were already online. Uploaded from half a dozen different angles, they spread like a contagion. The titles were sensational and immediate. Jason Statham destroys cop who attacked his mom. Real-life action hero serves justice. Oak Creek takedown. The hashtag Statham Justice was trending worldwide within the hour. By nightfall, the combined view count had surpassed 10 million. The footage was raw, undeniable, and utterly captivating. It showed a uniformed officer's aggression, an elderly woman's dignity, and a son's swift, decisive retribution. It was a modern-day fable played out on a suburban lawn, and the world couldn't get enough. Inside the Oak Creek Police Department, Chief Harold Granger was living a nightmare. His office felt like a pressure cooker. Phones rang incessantly. "I've got the mayor's office on line 1, CNN on line 2, and some blogger from TMZ who apparently knows Jansen's shoe size," he roared at his overwhelmed staff. "What in God's name happened out there?" An officer, pale and sweating, held up a tablet showing the viral video. "Sir, Statham didn't use a weapon." Granger slammed his hand on his desk. "Don't you get it? Statham is the weapon." And that idiot Jansen pointed him at himself. The chief sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. The PR fallout was going to be catastrophic. This wasn't just about a rogue cop anymore. It was about the image of his entire department, now being defined by one man's brutal efficiency. Meanwhile, at Riverside Medical Center, the mood was quieter but no less intense. Jason sat beside his mother as a doctor examined her bruised shoulder. The physical injury was minor, but the emotional shock lingered. "You know, he didn't even hesitate," Eleanor said softly, her gaze distant. "He looked at me, and it was like I wasn't a person, just an obstacle." Jason's jaw tightened, the muscles flexing in a hard line. He remained silent, but a cold, calculated fury was building within him. This was what enraged him most. It wasn't the personal insult to his family. It was the casual dehumanization, the absolute abuse of power. If Jansen was willing to do this to a 78-year-old woman in broad daylight, with neighbors watching, what had he done in the shadows? What other lives had he trampled on when the cameras weren't rolling? He knew this wasn't over. The takedown on the lawn was just the opening salvo. A formal investigation would be slow, bureaucratic, and likely sanitized. Jason Statham didn't do slow. He didn't do sanitized. He decided then and there that he wouldn't just wait for justice. He would drag it into the light himself. He pulled out his phone and made a call to his lawyer, his voice low and determined. I want to know everything about Officer Rick Jansen. Every complaint, every commendation, every whisper. Dig it all up. The next morning, Jason Statham walked into the Oak Creek Police Department. He didn't bring press or a lawyer. He came alone, his presence immediately sucking the air out of the bustling reception area. The desk sergeant's jaw went slack as he recognized the man from the viral videos. "I'm here to see Chief Granger," Jason said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Before the sergeant could stammer a reply, Granger himself appeared in the hallway, his face a mask of strained professionalism. He had clearly been warned of Statham's arrival. "Mr. Statham, you can't just barge in here. This is an active investigation." Jason met his gaze, unflinching. "I'm not here to interfere with your paperwork, Chief. I'm here for answers." Granger crossed his arms, a defensive posture. "Officer Jansen has been suspended without pay. Your mother's statement has been taken. The process is in motion." "The process," Jason echoed, a hint of derision in his voice. "Your process allowed a man like that to wear your badge. He assaulted my mother because she walked too slowly. This isn't a procedural issue. It's a cancer in your department." "Look," Granger said, his voice lowering, "I don't need you turning this into one of your movies." Jason stepped closer, invading the chief's personal space. "It became a movie the moment your officer decided to be the villain. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here to make sure you do your job. And if you won't, I'll find someone who will." He turned and walked out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. His message was clear. He was now a stakeholder, and he would be watching. The pressure worked. That same afternoon, Rick Jansen was discharged from the hospital and immediately taken into the custody of internal affairs. As he was led in handcuffs from an unmarked car to the station's back entrance, a mob of reporters ambushed him, shouting questions. "Do you regret hitting an elderly woman, officer? Did you know she was Jason Statham's mother? Is it true this isn't your first complaint?" Jansen, his jaw swollen and wired shut, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal, said nothing. The swagger was gone, replaced by the pathetic image of a bully stripped of his power. The political machine, sensing a seismic shift in public opinion, kicked into high gear. The mayor of Los Angeles, a man who typically moved with glacial speed, called an emergency press conference. "I have personally spoken with Mr. Statham and his mother, Eleanor," he announced, his face grave for the cameras. "And I have assured them that justice will be swift and absolute. No badge, no uniform, grants anyone the right to abuse the public's trust. Not in this city." It was a rare and stunningly fast response. But when your opponent is Jason Statham, and the court of public opinion has already delivered a unanimous verdict, there is no time to stall. The system was bending to the will of one very determined, very dangerous man. 2 weeks passed. The world moved on to the next viral sensation. But for Rick Jansen, the nightmare was just beginning. Suspended, facing assault charges, and universally despised, he was a pariah. His name was a punchline in late-night monologues. His face was a meme for toxic policing. He had lost his job, his reputation, and his pride. He spent his days stewing in his small, dark apartment, the curtains drawn, replaying the 10-second humiliation over and over in his mind. But the humiliation didn't curdle into regret. It fermented into a poisonous, obsessive rage. He didn't want an apology. He wanted revenge. Late one night, Jason Statham was in his backyard. The property was secluded, surrounded by a high wall and dense trees. Under the cold, silver light of a full moon, he moved through a series of fluid, brutal forms, a blend of Krav Maga and Muay Thai. He was barefoot on the cool grass, his movements silent and precise. It was his meditation, a way to center the storm inside him. That's when he felt it. Not a sound, but a subtle shift in the atmosphere. A disturbance in the rhythm of the night. His instincts, honed over a lifetime of discipline, screamed before his mind caught up. He wasn't alone. He slowly turned his head, his body remaining in a ready stance. From the deep shadows near the back wall, a figure emerged. It was Rick Jansen. He was limping, his face still bearing the faint yellow of old bruises, but his eyes held the wild, unhinged glint of a man with nothing left to lose. In one hand, he gripped a high-voltage stun baton. "You ruined me," Jansen hissed, his voice a ragged whisper. "You took everything from me." Jason's posture didn't change. "You did that to yourself," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I came here to finish this," Jansen snarled, taking a clumsy step forward. Jason simply cracked his knuckles, the sound sharp and final in the night air. "Then let's finish it." Jansen lunged, swinging the stun baton in a wide, desperate arc. The air crackled with electricity. Jason moved like a phantom. He sidestepped the swing with contemptuous ease, his hand clamping down on Jansen's wrist mid-arc. He twisted. A sharp snap echoed through the yard, and Jansen shrieked as the baton fell from his nerveless fingers. "I warned you," Jason said, his voice a low growl, "about hurting my mother." He spun, using Jansen's momentum against him, and drove a crushing back elbow into the same ribs he had targeted 2 weeks prior. The scream this time was guttural, a sound of pure agony. Jansen crumpled to his knees, clutching his side, gasping for air. "Please," he wheezed. Jason stood over him, a patient predator. "You don't belong in a uniform. You don't belong on the street." "Shut up," Jansen spat, and with his good hand, he pulled a small, wicked-looking blade from a sheath on his ankle. A final, desperate gambit. But Jason's foot was already in motion. A swift, powerful kick snapped Jansen's wrist, sending the knife flying into the darkness. Jansen howled, swinging a wild, telegraph punch with his broken hand. Jason caught the fist, twisted it, and with another sickening crack, broke the man's arm. Finally, he slammed a fist into Jansen's solar plexus, dropping him for good. Jansen lay on the grass, a broken, wheezing mess. Jason crouched beside him, his face unreadable in the moonlight. He pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and spoke into it. "You can come get him now." From the house, a light flicked on. Eleanor stepped onto the back patio, holding a cordless phone. "The sheriff is on his way," she said calmly. Jason gave her a slight nod. By the time the authorities arrived, they found Rick Jansen sitting on the lawn, zip-tied, with a blanket draped over his shoulders by the man who had just dismantled him. The courtroom was a media circus, but the verdict was never in doubt. Jansen's defense attorney tried to paint a picture of a man under immense stress, pushed to the edge by public humiliation. The jury didn't buy it for a second. The mountain of evidence was insurmountable. The initial assault captured from 6 angles, the witness testimonies, and the foolish, desperate revenge attempt. Rick Jansen was found guilty on all counts: assault, trespassing, and attempted retaliation. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in state prison, stripped him of his pension, and permanently barred him from ever holding a position in law enforcement again. Justice wasn't just served, it was carved into the legal record. After the verdict, Jason Statham stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by a swarm of reporters. Microphones were thrust in his face. "Mr. Statham, any comment on the verdict?" one reporter shouted. Jason looked directly into the nearest camera, his expression serious. "The uniform doesn't make the man," he said, his voice clear and steady. "His choices do. The city and my mother deserve better." "What do you say to those who call your actions vigilante justice?" another asked. A faint, hard smile touched Jason's lips. "I say that if protecting your mother from a violent man makes you a vigilante, then I'll wear that title with honor." Later that evening, the world felt quiet again. Jason and Eleanor sat on her porch swing, the gentle creak a familiar rhythm. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of orange and gold. You know, Eleanor said, sipping her tea, I always knew you were a handful as a boy, but I never imagined you'd grow up to be the literal fist of justice. Jason chuckled, a rare, warm sound. Wasn't in the career plan. Well, she said, leaning her head on his strong shoulder. Don't hang up your belt just yet. Something tells me the world still has plenty of bullies who need a lesson. He looked out at the darkening street, a sense of peace settling over him. The fight was over. For now, what happened here was extreme, but it makes you think. Where is the line between justice and revenge? And what would you do to protect the ones you love? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Be honest, but always comment with respect. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories of when the tables get turned.